Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Tuvas, and I'm here today to bring you guys another VTOL VR tutorial video. In today's tutorial, we are going to be going over general weapon system usage in the AV-42. Now, when I say general, I mean that being an early access title, at least at the time of this recording, VTOL VR is subject to change. Updates are inevitable for both fixing bugs, but also balancing weapon systems. Now, with that in mind, I want to keep this weapons tutorial as generalized as possible, so I won't go into too many details regarding each of the specific weapons, because there's many to choose from and they're all subject to change. Instead, I will be going over the general weapons employment, how to configure each one through your MFCDs, as well as, just generally how to use weapons. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Before we can even start using weapons, we have to configure our aircraft, our AV-42C, with weapons to begin with. So with that in mind, we can go through the configuration hanger and set this up to whatever our mission entails. So in our case, what I want is a nice assortment of different kinds of weapons so I can show you the functionality of each. So for example, in the far left pylon over here, we will set this up with probably Freefall Mark 82s, which is going to be our freefall bombs. In the next pylon over, let's go ahead and set this up with Hydra 70s, which is our unguided rocket pod in a 4x4 configuration. Next one over, let's go ahead and select our AGM 114s, or Hellfire missiles. And last but not least, let's go ahead and select our AIM-9 Sidewinders in a triple rack configuration. And of course, this is actually last but not least, but down at the bottom, we can also equip our GAU-8 Avenger, which is our main gun for the aircraft. Now that we have weapons in place, we can now employ those weapons in-game. As always, before we can actually use our aircraft, it has to be, well, started. So let's quickly go through the startup procedure. APU is spooled up. Let's go and turn on our engines. Close these switch covers. Keep an eye on our engines and make sure they are fully spooled up. So just wait for the dials to go up, then drop back down. There we go. Now we can turn off our APU, make it a bit more quiet in the cockpit, and now we are ready to set up our systems to the way we need them for this tutorial. In our case, what we care about for this weapons tutorial is our weapon system. So, in any of your MFCDs, go ahead and select Equip, and this brings you to your weapon configuration panel. And from here you'll be able to see all the different weapons you currently have attached to your aircraft. In our case, we have our GAU-8 Avenger, this is our main gun, our AGM 114s, which is our Hellfire missiles, Hydra 70, which is our unguided rockets in 4x4 configuration, our air-to-air AIM-9 Sidewinders in triple rack configuration, hence the number 3, and finally our Mark 82 unguided freefall bombs in 3-rack configuration as well. So, that said, another MFCD you'll probably want configured is your target panel. Go ahead and set that to power so you can actually see what you're attacking. And lastly, you'll probably want your navigation set up as well. So that is the basic systems coverage, but in addition to the MFCDs, you also want to make sure your master arm switch is on. Otherwise, your weapons won't actually be armed and you won't be able to use them. With our weapons armed, what's probably the next most important step is finding targets to use these armed weapons against. So that is what our navigation MFCD is for. If we were to zoom out a little bit, we can see that there are plenty of targets to choose from on the island in the distance, indicated, oh, looks like someone just died. I think someone just crashed into the ground. But they're indicated by these orange icons here on the map. So here is going to be a bunch of ground targets, and anything that looks like a dot with a triangle indicates air targets. Now that we're circling the city here, we know that we have a couple targets in this location indicated by these orange brackets around each of those targets. So it is our choice on how we want to deal with those targets, and we have different weapons we could choose from. So if you were to cycle through your different modes, you have arming, jettison, and config. By selecting config, you can go through each of these different weapons and see what options we have as far as the configuration. In the case of the Avenger, there's nothing really except making sure it's armed. In the case of the AGM 114s, once again, not much other than making sure it's armed, or we could jettison it. In the case of the Hydra 70s, our unguided rockets, we can actually choose what happens when we pull the trigger. So let's set this to 400 so it doesn't fire off too quickly. And next we're going to have to select this as a weapon we want to use. To do that, you're going to want to grab your flight stick and press the top button on your controller. If it's the touch controller, it's going to be your B button, or if it's a Vive 1, it's just going to be the button that's on the top of your touchpad. So keep pressing that until you see on your HUD that you've selected your Hydra 70s. You'll have a count of 16 if you haven't used them yet. So now that that's selected, let's go ahead and take out our targets. Slow down your aircraft so you have time to attack them, and line up this green circle, your reticle, because this indicates where your rockets are going to be. So once you are over your target, pull the trigger until you're satisfied. Of course, I'm missing like crazy, but whatever. Now, if you're terrible like me and miss your targets, you have plenty more weapons to choose from, but generally speaking, that is how you use your weapons. So, obviously we still have more targets left, so let's go ahead and switch over to something else now that the Hydras are depleted. In fact, let's go to our jettison mode, select the Hydra, then flip up our jettison cover and hit jettison. That drops the rack so that it's no longer weighing us down, and we can move on to something else. So in this case, let's go ahead and choose our Hellfire missiles, which is our AGM-114s. So once again, press the top button on your controller while holding the joystick until you reach your AGM-114. And in this case, we are going to use these as air-to-ground missiles, hence the name AGM. So as we approach our targets, we can use our targeting pod with our touchpad or our joystick on a touch controller to slew the camera onto our target. Our camera is indicated by a square reticle on your HUD, and if you move that over one of these targets, you'll get a lock-on just like that. If you hear the tone, you know your Hellfire is ready to be fired. You can actually see that the tank is being targeted here, and when you have a lock, go ahead and fire it. Then you could do the same for the next one over, next one over, and last one. And just like that, all 4 targets are down and all 4 Hellfires have been fired. And we're going to come back around and make a pass on these ground troops using our gun. So once again, use the top button on your controller while holding the joystick until you have your GAU-8 selected. Actually, you know, I just forgot. We still have free fall bombs. Let's use that instead. So keep pressing the button until you reach your Mark 82s. Now, there is actually a really good tutorial already available by the developer of VTOL VR, so I'll leave a link to that video in the description below. But we are just going to go and do a quick pass for a bombing run on these ground troops that are over here on the side. So we're going to get as much height as possible. Find these troops, there they are. They are indicated by the red brackets. And look for our bombing reticle as we pass over them. And there she is right there. All we have to do is make sure it's lined up with them and pull the trigger. And just like that, the bomb is on its way. Now, of course, we're not getting a good view on them, but we could see the aftermath. And there you have it. That's what it's like dropping the Mark 82s. So let's switch over to our next weapon, that is our air-to-air missiles. Now that we're trying to do air-to-air targets, what we want to do is make sure we have our air-to-air missiles selected. So go ahead and press the top button on your joystick until you reach the AIM-9s, and what you'll hear is the seeker head on the missile scanning for a target. Since we have an air-to-air target right here, all we have to do is move this green circle now with AIM-9 selected over an air-to-air target, and the tone of the missile will change once it has a lock-on. There you go, we now have a lock-on when you hear that sound, and when you hear that, go ahead and press the trigger on your joystick and launch the missile. Now, of course, the air-to-air target is going to do its best to make sure it doesn't get shot down, so unfortunately, the missiles tend to go for flares very easily. So get the lock-on, and then fire that off. Probably a little too close. And we only have one missile left, so let's wait for him to calm down a bit and stop jettisoning flares. And fire. And of course, I went for the already deployed flares. Because I know dogfighting is going to be a pretty popular thing to do in VTOL VR, I wanted to go over the configuration settings in the arming window for the AIM-9. So with config mode selected, go ahead and select your AIM-9, and what you'll see is that there's different seek modes for the seeker head on the missiles. By default, it is set to cage, so right now it's bore sight. Basically, that green reticle, the circle, will stay in one spot, and you're forced to move that reticle onto your target to get the tone. However, that can be very difficult to do, so to make it a little easier, go ahead and select seek mode and set it to uncaged. So it's scanning that general area, so all you have to do is just move the target to that general area. The seeker head will get tone and remain locked on, and you can actually pull your nose away from the target and it'll stay locked on for that whole time. Now that doesn't necessarily mean the missile will still hit it, but you don't have to strive, or you don't have to work very hard to get the initial lock on and remain locked before you pull the trigger. Alternatively, there's also vertical scan mode, which means if the target is above you, it will bounce up and down until it reaches the target. So in this case, if we move it that way, now it has the lock. It will only fire in the vertical plane, or it will only lock in the vertical plane. And last but not least is head track mode, where the missile will seek for targets only within your field of view. So if you move your head, you can tell the missile where to lock on. So in our case, if we just look at this target, it'll get the lock on, but if we look away, it'll stop locking on. So as long as we maintain our head look on it, we can get the lock on tone and then fire the missile. Now that we're out of missiles, let's switch over to our gun and just simply get a guns kill on this guy. Now with guns selected, your gun will actually automatically target the aircraft in front of you and give you an adjustment to the reticle to know where you have to place the aircraft on your HUD in order to actually hit it. Because without the lock-on, the gun won't actually be accurate and hit your target. So now that we have the lock-on, we know we have to maneuver our aircraft so that the body of the aircraft is within the gun's reticle. Now that's on Pipper, go ahead and start taking some shots. We see we hit it a couple times there. Oh, once it changes direction, it's a little difficult. Almost there. Come on. Lost the lock. Come on, get it back, get it back. Here we go. And nope, not good enough. Target on Pipper. Got him. And that is how you use your gun in air-to-air combat, because we are fresh out of missiles. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked this video, make sure to leave a like. If you really liked and like to see more of this kind of stuff, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And VTOL VR, as I mentioned before, is an early access title. It is available on Steam, so I'll leave a link to the Steam store page down in the description below, so give that a look. And just remember, a prerequisite for playing this game is you need to have a VR headset, and you also need to have motion controllers. Otherwise, you won't be able to use the controls in the game itself. Now, the developer has talked about providing HOTAS support, but there's no word yet on how quickly that'll become available. Once again, it is an early access title, so just keep that in mind. Anyways, guys, once again, thank you again for watching, and have a nice day.